What will happen to Donbas and Crimea during and after the deoccupation? The bill on the state policy for the transition period is planned to be submitted to the Verkhovna Rada in the nearest future. Deputy Prime Minister, Ukraine Minister for Reintegration of the temporarily occupied territories, Oleksiy Reznikov, spoke about this in an interview. Our journalists have also studied the issue and prepared a report.
Creation of legal mechanism for the return of the occupied territories under the control of Ukraine and regulation of relations between the Ukrainian authorities and the residents of separate regions of Donetsk and Luhansk regions and Crimea. This is the task of the law and state policy of the transition period. It should define the basis for the deoccupation process. What is the conflict and the post-conflict period? What do we do with amnesty? What do we do with the certification of documents? What do we do after deoccupation, after demining, disarmament and demilitarization regime? These are the main security issues to be resolved before the local elections. The preliminary text of the bill has already been reviewed by the relevant committee of the parliament. They say the document removes the inconsistencies that exist in the Ukrainian legislation regarding the occupied territories.
At present, there is a number of legislative gaps. We must say that this is a comprehensive bill. We now have a number of laws in force, but define the procedures regarding Crimea and Donbas differently. We must unify this approach.
The Ministry for Reintegration has involved dozens of organizations to finalize the document. These are universities, academia, expertise and human rights organizations, embassies, international humanitarian organizations. And we are now receiving feedback from them. We have already received more than 90 responses with recommendations, adjustments, objections and remarks. Human rights activists noted that although the bill is positioned as a framework one, they are trying to detail what should be spelled out in separate laws.
We try to include everything related to the occupation into one bill. Unfortunately, it is impossible to do so because some issues cannot be regulated by this law. This concerns criminal liability, tax legislation, customs regulations. Such an attempt to answer all questions leads to the fact that some of the answers are not sufficiently substantiated.
Experts say that a large block of questions in the bill is aimed at simplifying the life of residents of the territories temporarily not controlled by Ukraine. Some of the certificates are issued by unrecognized occupation administrations. This bill does not recognize these occupation administrations in any case, but at the same time allows Ukrainian courts, Ukrainian authorities to take into account the information contained in these illegal certificates. Thus, this applies to inheritance, marriage, birth of children, admission to higher education institutions. The Ministry of Reintegration promises to take into account the criticism and amend the document within the following 2 or 3 weeks. After that, the bill will be registered in the parliament. Its approval can take from several to 6 months. After that, the MPs and the Cabinet of Ministers must prepare documents that would specify the norms of the law on the transition period. For example, the amnesty law. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Yulia Krychkova, UATV News.